Welcome to 2819. I'm Sandra Dimas.
And I'm Brian Rohenbacher.
And we have a pretty wide range of topics for you today.
Yeah, it's going to be really good. In our Culture Talk segment, Sandra will be interviewing Laurie Stewart, who will be talking about the rise of women in apologetics.
Yeah, that's such an important, really just movement right now. So I'm excited to talk to her about that. And then in Give and Take, Jeff will be talking with astronomer Hugh Ross about a reasonable approach to climate change.
That's always a hot topic. See what I did there? But first up is RTB 101. Krista will be talking with biochemist Fazale Rana, asking the question, can DNA survive for 75 million years?
Now it's time for RTB 101, where we discuss practical questions to equip you to share your faith more effectively. And here to help me talk about a very common question among my friends who believe in the young earth is my colleague, Dr. Fazale Rana. Welcome back, Fuzz.
Krista, thanks for having me.
Now, from what I understand, common wisdom says that DNA should not survive for millions of years. It should decay away a long time ago, except when it doesn't. And we're talking about some of those times when it doesn't seem to decay away. So I'm going to have you help walk us through a recent discovery that prompted this discussion.
Yeah, well, recently a team of researchers from North Carolina State University discovered evidence for DNA associated with a juvenile duckbill dinosaur that dates at about 75 million years in age. And this is the first time anybody has discovered any kind of evidence for DNA in a fossil specimen of that age. And so this is a landmark discovery to be certain. And it raises all kinds of very interesting questions, including the questions that our friends who are young earth creationists would ask, which is basically, how is it possible for DNA to survive 75 million years in age? Clearly, these fossils must be only thousands of years old, not 75 million years old. And therefore, the dating techniques used to determine the age of these fossils, and hence the age of the Earth, must be flawed. And so they see this as being prima facie evidence that the Earth must be only 3,000 to 6,000 years, must be only 6,000 years old.
Yeah, and that last point is very important because they see this evidence as being part of their positive scientific case for the Earth only being thousands, not millions of years old. So when we think about these ancient DNA tissue discoveries, help us think about that from an old Earth creation perspective. What do you think could account for this anomalous data?
Yeah, well, and the first point I would make is that there's absolutely no reason whatsoever to think that the radiometric dating techniques used to age date fossils is a flawed technique. There's plenty of evidence that indicates this is a reliable dating method. And so therefore, there's got to be some explanation for how DNA could survive that long. And in fact, researchers have been working on these kind of questions for quite some time now. How is it possible for soft tissue materials to survive in fossils, and have recognized that there's two competing mechanisms. One is decomposition, and the other are mechanisms that would essentially delay that decomposition process. And you just simply have to delay the decomposition process long enough for the soft tissue materials to become encased in a mineral entombment. And once they become kind of encased in minerals, these soft tissue materials essentially will no longer decay. And so we understand in principle how this preservation could take place. And it turns out that under highly unusual circumstances, soft tissue materials can survive in fossil remains for a variety of different types of mechanisms that, again, delay the decomposition process just long enough for mineral entombment to take place.
So just to highlight a couple of points that you said there, Fuzz, if I understand what you're saying, that in general, we know that these dating techniques are reliable because we see all this evidence for the reliability. And at the same time, we can acknowledge that there are these anomalous data points, data that doesn't quite fit the model. And so we're trying to figure out, how do we make sense of that data? But the anomalous data is rare, and so it doesn't overturn the whole framework. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so that means then that there must be some way to, again, account for the preservation of, in this case, DNA, just long enough now for it to become entombed within a mineral encasement. And so, for example, this particular specimen that was studied was was an exceptionally well preserved specimen that had very well preserved cartilage material. And cartilage actually it lacks vascularization, meaning it's not porous, but it's a very solid material that really prevents microorganisms and environmental enzymes from gaining access, and even water, to any kind of materials that would be embedded within that cartilage matrix. On top of that, the DNA was detected in what looked like to be the remnants of chondrocytes that were undergoing cell division. This rapid cell division that these chondrocytes were undergoing likely created an oxygen-depleted environment that, again, would have delayed the decomposition process. And plus, the DNA was likely coming from chromosomes that were tightly condensed, tightly packed, which would prevent access of materials that could degrade the DNA from actually gaining access to it. And then on top of that, what was discovered wasn't full DNA molecules that were completely intact, but what was rather small, tiny fragments of DNA, most likely, that was what was being detected. And so that makes a lot of sense, again, given everything we know about DNA decomposition. So in other words, it's possible to come up with reasonable scenarios for how the DNA could survive. Again, it doesn't have to survive 75 million years. It has to survive just long enough to become, again, encapsulated in a mineral matrix. And at that point, it's going to essentially freeze it. It's going to be in suspended animation until researchers come along and release the DNA from that mineral matrix.
Well, this is really fascinating, Fuzz. I'm wondering, as I'm talking to my non-Christian friends, why is this discussion important? What are the things that are going to be in their minds about it as a non-Christian?
You know, the idea that the Earth is only 6,000 years old to people that are non-believers is really a ludicrous idea, to be frank. And so when we try to couple our defense of the Christian faith with a young Earth paradigm, we really get into big trouble, and we really undermine the gospel itself. And it's very tempting to use this idea of soft tissue materials associated with fossils as evidence for a young Earth, but I've never met anybody who was a non-believer who found this argument to be compelling, even in the least. And so, to me, I think the important point here is this, that we want to be very careful as we advance scientific arguments for the Christian faith. We want to make sure that those arguments have scientific credibility. Otherwise, we really do our case a lot of damage.
Very good. Well, thank you for the conversation. And I want to encourage all of our viewers to go check out Fuzz's blog, The Cell's Design. It's at reasons.org.
Now it's time for Culture Talk, where we discuss culturally relevant topics that you can use to start conversations about your faith. I'm joined today with Women in Apologetics President Laurie Stewart. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Sandra. Thanks for asking me. I love talking about women in apologetics.
Yeah, you know what? We have a Women in Apologetics conference coming up. And first, before we dive into that, if you can explain kind of your role and what you do with Women in Apologetics.
Sure, that's a good question. Well, I'm the president of Women in Apologetics, but really it's a team of amazing women who've come together with a common vision to help equip, educate, and encourage other women getting involved in apologetics, being able to study what they believe is true about Christianity so they can have, a confidence, number one, in their own faith, and be able to also answer tough questions that other people might have about why they believe Christianity is true.
So there's a conference coming up hosted by Reasons to Believe and Women in Apologetics. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
I'm really excited about that conference. It's a wonderful partnership that we get to have with Reasons to Believe. And, you know, one of the common objections I think that we hear for Christians is that science trumps religion, or it trumps Christianity, or even debunks Christianity. And that's not true. In fact, Christianity is very compatible with science. And in fact, I think that science even supports it, that Christianity is true. And so this conference is really going to give an opportunity for some amazing speakers to be talking about why you can have faith and Christianity, and why they're mutually supporting each other and they're not in conflict.
And that's going to be a virtual event?
It will be. We're still in the pandemic lockdown here in California. So yeah. And the good thing is we can actually reach more people around the United States and even around the world. So I see it as a blessing in disguise.
Right. No, definitely. Because then there's no travel costs and we can just like register and jump in and hear these amazing speakers. So I'm really excited for this conference. Now, some might wonder like why it's important to focus on having women in apologetics and not just make it about apologetics in general.
Yeah, I think that's a really fair question. So because people ask me that all the time. Why do you even need to have women in apologetics? Why don't you just have women who are studying apologetics? I would say a couple of things to that, Sandra. First of all, I think everybody needs apologetics. So it's not just for men, but it's been primarily a male-dominated field in the past for a variety of reasons, which are not really important right now. But I think that women are finding that they have questions about their own faith. Maybe they have doubts about what they believe. Maybe they look at different things that are happening in the culture and they're trying to make sense of it in terms of what's a biblical perspective of what we see, the problems in the world around us. Or maybe even it's just their own kids are wrestling with their faith and they're coming home from high school or college and they're asking difficult questions about why do we believe that Jesus really existed? Wasn't he just a myth? Or how do we really trust the Bible? Hasn't it been corrupted over the years? Or just does God even really exist? Or is it just like wishful thinking? And so I think that as parents, especially as mothers, and mothers are often the first line of defense with their kids. Kids may come to mom first and ask their questions. Not always, but I think that in general is probably true. Women have been doing Bible studies for years and they have their own devotion time. So I think women are they buy more books than men do. So women, I think, are kind of naturally inclined to want to know how to deepen their own faith and their relationship with God through Jesus Christ. But having our own personal Bible study time and devotion time is just not enough. We're in a culture that is just throwing all kinds of strange ideas at us. And so how do we learn how to make sense of these things and be able to encourage our children in their own faith and to believe that Christianity is true, that God has revealed himself through Jesus and his word, and that we can trust those things, and that there are answers for the difficult questions that we have in life.
Right. I love what you said, like just talking about how women, and especially mothers, that we are often the first line of defense, that children will come to their moms with these big questions. So you're absolutely right. All the more reason why it is so important for women to be involved in apologetics. So if you have someone who, whether they're a mother or not, they want to get involved in apologetics and they don't know where to start, aside from visiting Women in Apologetics website, what would you recommend? What are some kind of basic tools and resources that you would point them to?
Yeah, great. I'm glad you asked that question. Well, of course, I have to put the plug in for the Women in Apologetics website because we have resources. So first of all, we have a list of female apologists, and you can click on those links and it'll take you to their websites. And so we have amazing women with blogs and a variety of resources. So that's just a starting point of more resources. And then we have a list of books as well that some women have written. So I have my own blog, and so I've got a list of resources to start with. Okay, but here's where it comes down to. So this is what I tell women who might be a little intimidated, like, I can't be like a William Lane Craig, or Hugh Ross. I don't have that kind of education and training, right? I mean, they're brilliant, brilliant men, but you don't have to be like them. We just be ourselves. Each of us should learn how to find our own voice in this conversation and to be ourselves. And for a woman who's just looking to get started, for example, if she has kids, get started with the kids in apologetics books. There are books for preschoolers, and there are picture books. So you can get started, just reading those to start getting some foundation. And then you can graduate to some books for a little older children. Lee Strobel has some really great books on Case for Christ, for kids, a whole series. Melissa Cain Travis has wonderful picture books for kids. I mean, there's just a variety of resources, too many for me to enumerate here. But if they're a parent, they can go to ChristianMomThoughts.com, which is Natasha Crane's website. There's Mama Bear Apologetics. I mean, we just have some, I'm sure I'll leave somebody important out. But there are just some really great resources. Start small. If it seems intimidating, you don't have to become, the world's best philosopher to be able to understand how to speak to people about what you believe and be able to have some solid reasons for why you believe Christianity is true, why there is a God, why Jesus is real, why he really did die for our sins, why we believe there is a triune nature to God, that he's Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and that we can trust the Bible, and that is the revealed word of God, and that we use that as a basis for what we believe and how to live out our life and how to make sense of the chaos that we see in the world around us. Because let's be honest, I mean, it's scary and dark, and we see conflict all around us. So how in the world do we make sense of these things if we don't have some concrete framework, which the Bible gives us, so that we can sort through these difficult issues?
Right. No, you're absolutely right. Thank you so much for that. So again, give us those details on the conference coming up in September.
Yeah, so you can go to womenandapologetics.com and click on our events page, and it's called the Illuminate Conference, and it's a partnership of Reasons to Believe and Women in Apologetics, and you can sign up right there. It is September 18 and 19. It is going to be a virtual conference.
Well, thank you again so much for just sharing your heart for women in apologetics and encouraging women to just jump in. So if you are a budding apologist, be sure to check out womeninapologetics.com. And you know what? Take that first step. Open up some books and really learn so that you can be encouraging your children and people in your sphere of influence to know how to defend their.
Hello, Jeff Zwaring here, and welcome back to Give and Take, the segment of our show where we discuss important scientific ideas, how they support the truth of Christianity, and equip you to be confident to go share that truth. Today, we're joined by founder and president of Reasons to Believe, Dr. Hugh Ross, and we are going to discuss the reality of climate change. Hugh, it's good to have you on the show today.
Well, thank you.
You know, when you talk about climate change, that just seems to be something everybody has an opinion on. Some say it's real, some say it's not. So let's kind of dig into that a little bit. Is climate change real? How would you answer that question?
Well, we got really good temperature records, especially over the last century. And it does show that over the past 70 years, the global mean temperature has gone up by 1 degree centigrade.
So we've got a clear evidence that the temperature has increased. Is that something humanity is playing a role in, or is it just something that's a natural variation?
That's been a big debate. And what I've written in my book is that we now have the data to show that the human factor is indeed the biggest factor. If for no other reason, the natural factors are actually working to cool the planet. So if you're going to explain the global warming, it's got to be our activity.
So clearly we've got global warming happening. Something over the last 100 years, temperatures increased by about 1 degree C. Humanity is definitely involved in that. You even indicated there's a significant factor. There's other factors at play there. But I know you have a little different take on this. Instead of arguing about whether global climate change is happening or not, you have a different perspective. How do you respond to the fact that the globe is warming?
Well, the old data would say that the global mean temperature has been stable to within plus or minus 2 degrees centigrade over the past few thousand years. We now got temperature records that tell us it's stable to within plus or minus 0.65 degrees centigrade over the past 9,000 years. We see a very gradual cooling of 1 degree centigrade over the past 9,000 years, or the past 70 years has gone up back to where it was 8,700 years ago.
So if you look at data for for thousands of years, you said 7, 8, 9,000 years, something in that range, the global average temperature of the Earth has been remarkably stable, slowly decreasing,
right.
But by less than the amount that global warming has happened over the last century. Is that what you're saying?
Well, we got a 1 degree cooling over the past 8,700 years, or the past 70 years, a 1 degree warming. So we're basically where we were 8,700 years ago. But if you look at the past 8,700 years, it's extremely stable, just a very, very gradual cooling. What's happening is that the natural cooling has been counterbalanced by human activity that's been gradually warming the planet.
So that seems to lend support to this idea that humans are doing something pretty dramatic and we need to change that. But you seem to have a different perspective, that the fact that it's as stable as the temperature is as stable as it has been, that's actually the remarkable picture of the Earth. Kind of explain that a little bit more.
Yeah, it's unprecedented. This is the only time in the history of the Earth where we've had such stable global mean temperature at the ideal temperature for human civilization. So I'm arguing this is an amazing design feature of the Earth, particularly when you put in the natural active cycles that are cooling the planet being perfectly balanced by the human activities that are warming it. I mean, you got control at both ends.
So if we look at the record of the temperature record of the Earth, we see that there are large temperature swings, except for over the last roughly 9,000 years, it's been relatively stable. And your contention is that that's a design feature, that it's designed for humanity to be here. Why do you say that? Why is this not something that as humans, it seems like we're destroying?
Well, if you look at the ice age cycle, the global mean temperature jumps up and down by 12 or 13 degrees centigrade over time scales of a few centuries. There were humans living during the last ice age. They weren't able to amount to much because the climate was so extremely stable. The moment it stabilized, human civilization was launched and has been exploding to this very day. It's all thanks to all these amazing design features coming together at just the right time.
That's a remarkable statement. I think it warrants mentioning and just highlighting that, in this ice age cycle, the temperatures can change by 10, 15 degrees Celsius over a couple of centuries. And we're talking about 1 degree Celsius over a century. So this is a remarkably small amount compared to the natural variability that Earth sees.
That's true. And people say, well, why didn't God put us here without an ice age cycle? Because the ice age cycle hasn't always been here. We need the ice age cycle in order to have the water and the fertilization to be able to feed billions of human beings. That's what's remarkable. We're in this ice age cycle, which drives climate instability, but now we're in this unique window where the climate is extremely stable.
So I know in your book, Improbable Planet, you've outlined a number of things that can help, or that humanity can do to counteract its effect on the climate. And typically the changes to global warming tend to be pretty draconian and detrimental to humanity. But you have a different take on that. What is your principle, or what are the principles you find as you look at scripture that helps us understand what are good solutions and what are bad solutions?
Well, that's a unique feature of the book Weathering Climate Change, is that we can stabilize the climate while we boost the world economy rather than sacrificing the world economy. So it's kind of like the anti-Al Gore book in that respect, if you want to think of it that way. But I'm actually drawing upon biblical principles. The Bible tells us that we're to manage the planet for our benefit and the benefit of all other life, which means that there will be solutions, environmental solutions, where we don't have to decide, is it our benefit or the benefit of all life? There will be solutions that will provide for the benefit of both us and all other life. We just need to look for those solutions.
Give us an example of one of those solutions and kind of how it plays out.
Yeah, and I want to put it in the context of another biblical principle, that we human beings are sinners and fundamentally selfish, and therefore we need to come up with solutions that are going to economically motivate people, not cause them to go against what's good for the environment. But yeah, the book is filled with examples of things we can do that will stabilize the climate while boosting the world economy. One that we can put into effect right away is change the way we manage our forests. I mean, there's a lot of concern that we're going to wipe out the Amazon jungle. And if we do that, it will be utterly catastrophic, not just for Brazil, but the entire human species. And so what I suggest in the book is we need to be able to educate those people there that getting rid of the forests and converting it to pasture land is a bad idea. The soil is not rich enough to be able to sustain pasture for cattle, but it's plenty good enough for sustaining the jungle. And if you actually harvest the jungle in the right way, where you're removing the older trees that are on the verge of dying, decaying, and releasing greenhouse gases to the atmosphere, harvest those trees. They're the most valuable trees in the jungle anyway. You're going to make the most money, but replace those trees with younger trees. And we know that the younger trees grow much faster. And so they're actually going to pull more greenhouse gases out of the atmosphere than if you leave the jungle alone. And I know that you like national parks. I do too. But when you visit those national parks, look at all the dead trees. The problem was we stopped forestry there, lumbering. What we need to do instead is selectively pull up the trees that are on the verge of dying. Now we're going to have a healthy forest there. The wildlife is going to love it, and the tourists are going to love it. And so everybody wins. So I'm all in favor of a time when the tourists aren't going there anyway. Let's selectively take out the trees that are causing a problem for the forest.
Yeah, I think that's a remarkable perspective, Hugh, and I thank you for being on the show and sharing today.
You're welcome.
You know, when you raise the issue of climate change, people are highly polarized on it. But what I find remarkable is that the Bible actually has good principles that help us deal with this in a way that takes care of humanity and of creation. In fact, God charged us to be fruitful and multiply, take care of humanity, and rule over and subdue the earth, to take care of creation. You know, I would encourage you to go to reasons.org and check out Hugh's blog on this. It's called Is Climate Change Real? Are Economic Sacrifices Needed to Deal with It? We'll give you great tools to understand what some of these tools are of how to take care of creation and humanity, but also equip you to go out and share these remarkable principles about who the Creator is and how He's cared for us with those around.
That does it for us this week on 2819. We hope you enjoyed this episode and that it helped equip you to share your faith with confidence and compassion.
And be sure to subscribe to the show and also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We are at 2819 Show.
You can also get the audio version of the show wherever you listen to your podcast. Just search Reasons to Believe podcast.
And if you have a smart home device, you can also say, play Reasons to Believe podcasts, and you'll get to listen to us.
And that does it for us this week. See you all next time.
Bye.